Queerness is everywhere on Indian streaming. It began with Sacred Games, where Kubra Seth played Cuckoo, a trans woman stuck between the glamour and grime of Mumbai, Bombay, and later Arjun Mathur's Karan, the gay wedding planner in Made in Heaven's gilded Delhi. Slowly, queerness trickled to the Alt Balaji melodramas, the married woman in post-Babri Delhi, along with his story and mentalhood in contemporary Mumbai. Not to forget the inaugurating threesome of the sex anthology Gandhi Baat, set in this eroticized incarnation of rural India, where a man, unable to pleasure his wife because he's gay, recruits his hunk of a neighbor to have sex with her, and then jumps in midway. The bed creaks under the weight of 3 heated moans. Over the years, as Section 377 that criminalized gay sex was read down, as the Supreme Court put forth the progressive Nalsa judgment to empower trans lives, queerness seems to have become a staple presence. It is as though studio and streaming executives have added it to their checklist, insisting on it, even as a side plot or a throwaway character, irrespective of the urban-rural setting. This sudden pivot towards queerness can feel a little confusing, because it is hard to distinguish this effort to educate and become progressive from a mere pretense of signaling progressive values. In the past year itself, we have had the gay cop in Arya, the lesbian talent agent in Call My Agent Bollywood, the baby dyke in Bombay Begums, the struggling gay teen of The Fame Game, the cloistered lesbian doctor in Human, the closeted cricketer of Inside Edge, the "Hi, I'm Muskan, I'm 23 and I'm bisexual" sketch of a character in Feels Like Ishq, the lesbian lawyer of Guilty Minds, the trans woman influencer in Escape Live, and the ruffians in Mai, whose tenderness towards each other gets explained towards the end as love. One of the standout films from last year was, in fact, queer. Neeraj Khaiwan's Geeli Puchi, starring Konkana Sen Sharma and Aditi Rao Hydari. Despite its unsubtle dialogues lacking in rhythm, establishing queerness and desire with hammer and tongs, the film showed mastery over both the short film format as well as creating queer characters who are as tainted as they are troubled. This is a film unburdened by the need to paint queerness in neat, comforting, idealized strokes. It wasn't trying to sell you this idea of queerness. Cinema too has moved in lockstep. Over the past year, films like Chandigarh Kare Aashiki, Badhai Do, Cobalt Blue, Gangubai Kathiawadi and Hero Panti 2 have thrown forth their versions of queerness, however stilted, silly, sartorial or sensitive. A lot of the conversation around queerness, however, is still stuck at representation. To cast queer people to play queer characters, hire queer writers, lasso and queer directors.
They're not allowed to play a man in a film, and transgender people are not allowed to play women in films. So what do transgender artists play? Transgender trees?
There is, however, a more complicated aspect to queer cinema that I want to instead contend with. A bottleneck at the level of storytelling itself. Desire. Take the recent film from the Modern Love Mumbai anthology, Bai, about the misery and memories of one Manzar Ali, played by Pratik Gandhi. He's a Muslim gay man who's grappling with the tension of coming out to his dying grandmother. Peripherally, or centrally perhaps, there is a love story between him and a chef played by Ranveer Brar. While it dragged the corpse of the sad gay man, the Rotdu Admi trope, framing queerness as this dull, despairing, anxious condition, and insisting on marriage as the next logical step in love, the problem with the film ran deeper. What can you say of a film that is uncomfortable showing two men kissing, that it would rather have them rub chins instead? That its conception of desire is showing them half naked on a bed, speaking of life and longing in trite, lazy patches of dialogue? Where's the heat? One that 4 More Shots Please and Guilty Minds produced with a casual hand. Where's the sensuality? One that Cobalt Blue and Made in Heaven produced. The way characters touch and smell in Cobalt Blue or shove and thrust in Made in Heaven. Where is that? Desire is central to queerness, and if it cannot be central to queer cinema, then of what use is queer cinema at all? Historically, any traces of queerness had to be forcefully yanked from cinema, like the unintended but fully present queerness in the Dosti Yarana films of Bachchan, like Anand and Sholay, a subversive legacy that Ranveer Singh has fully embraced in his buddy-boning films like Kill Dil and Gunde, or the camp audacity of the vamp figure of Vixens of Desire, Helen and later Sridevi and Madhuri Dixit, sculpted by Saroj Khan's breast-thumping choreography, celebrating the body without shame or shyness. There is nothing intentionally queer in the making of these icons. The queerness was entirely produced by their reception, by younger kids twisting to these songs behind closed doors. One way of thinking of queer cinema is to continue the traditions of cinema as it has always been, centering the family as the space of conflict and catharsis, transplanting heterosexual romantic tropes onto queer stories. But there is another way to think of queer cinema, to insist on queerness as its own cultural territory with its own internal logic, its own grammar of narrative, desire, catharsis, its own contradictions and hypocrisies that it deals with in its own way. This conception refuses to be tied down by existing conventions or accommodate its flaring, unwieldy, erotically heavy, eternally unresolved stories and characters. To be clear, this is not about what makes good queer cinema, but what makes cinema queer. It is, I think, reckless, seething desire.